Once upon a time, there was a boy who refused to grow up. In a small farmhouse outside Kansas City, a skinny boy spent his days sketching animals in the dirt and dreaming of worlds far from the fields. His name was Walt Disney. His family was poor. His father was harsh. The real world was unforgiving. But in his mind, it was always Technicolor, a place where mice talked, dreams sang, and everyone got their happy ending. Walt would spend his life trying to turn that fantasy into something real. And in doing so, he changed not just entertainment, but how the world dreams. But like every Disney story, this one begins with heartbreak. As a teenager, Walt lied about his age to join the Red Cross during World War I. He never made it to the front, but he spent his nights painting cartoons on the side of ambulances. Even war for Walt was a canvas. When he came home, he was determined to turn art into a living. He founded a tiny animation studio with borrowed money and big dreams. Laugh-O-Gram Films. It failed within a year. He was 22, broke, sleeping in his office. But failure didn't end the story. It just set up the next act. Walt packed his suitcase, sold his camera, and bought a one-way train ticket to California. He had $40 and one idea: start again. In Hollywood, Walt started over with his brother Roy. They created cartoons about a cheerful rabbit named Oswald. The show was a hit until the studio that distributed it betrayed him. One afternoon, Walt walked into a meeting thinking he'd negotiate a raise. Instead, he walked out with nothing. His animators had been stolen. His contract was gone. Even his character, Oswald, legally belonged to someone else. He was crushed. But on the train ride home, something stirred. A new character, a mouse, cheerful, loyal, unstoppable. Everything Walt wanted to be. That mouse would save him. His name was Mickey. Mickey Mouse wasn't just a cartoon. He was resilience in motion, the triumph of optimism over betrayal, and audiences felt it. Within a year, Mickey was the most recognizable character in the world. Success didn't calm Walt. It ignited him. He wanted to build something no one had ever seen before. The first feature-length animated movie. Everyone called it Disney's Folly. He mortgaged his house, worked his animators to exhaustion, poured every dollar into it. When Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs premiered in 1937, the audience stood and applauded for 10 minutes straight. It became the highest-grossing film of its time. Walt Disney had turned a sketch into a kingdom, but behind the magic, cracks were forming. The studio grew too fast, costs exploded, strikes erupted. The US entered war, and government contracts replaced fairy tales. Walt, once the dreamer, became the disciplinarian. He blacklisted animators who'd gone on strike. He became paranoid, cold, distant. He'd built a factory of imagination. But somewhere in the noise of success, he'd lost his joy. By the late 1940s, the magic was fading. The public saw Disney as an empire. Inside, it was chaos. Films underperformed. Roy begged for restraint. And Walt, restless and frustrated, began to disappear from the studio floor. He found solace in miniature trains. Yes, trains. He built a model railroad in his backyard, complete with tunnels, switches, and tiny landscapes. When he sat on that little train circling his garden, he wasn't a mogul anymore. He was a kid again, sketching in the dirt. And that's when it hit him. What if everyone could enter the world he dreamed of? What if the story didn't end when the credits rolled? What if people could walk inside it? That thought became his next act. Walt Disney didn't invent theme parks. He reinvented them. He imagined a place where parents and children could play together, a land of stories made real. Banks laughed. Studios refused to back it. Even Roy thought it was madness. So Walt mortgaged his life again. He filmed a TV special to raise funds. He begged sponsors, fought for every inch of dirt in Anaheim. In 1955, Disneyland opened its gates, and everything went wrong. Plumbing failed, asphalt melted, Counterfeit tickets flooded in. The park was chaos. Critics called it Walt's folly. But he refused to see failure. He fixed every broken pipe, replanted every flower, rebuilt his world piece by piece. Within months, Disneyland became the most visited place on Earth. He'd done it again, turned disaster into magic. And for the first time since Mickey, Walt felt alive. After Disneyland's success, Walt began dreaming bigger. He wanted a city, not just for play, but for life itself. An experimental prototype community of tomorrow. He called it EPCOT. He wanted to reinvent cities the way he'd reinvented animation. Clean, efficient, humane. But while his imagination grew, his body faltered. In 1966, doctors found a tumor in his lung. He'd smoked all his life. Lying in the hospital, Walt stared at the ceiling tiles. He used them like a map, sketching EPCOT's layout in his mind. He told his brother, "Keep it going." Walt Disney died that winter at 65. A week later, Roy renamed the Florida project in his honor. Walt Disney World. When it opened 5 years later, people called it the happiest place on Earth. They were right. But the man who dreamed it never saw it. Walt Disney's story isn't about magic. It's about endurance. He failed more times than he succeeded. He lost friends, money, even his own creations. But he never stopped dreaming, because the dream was the point. He taught generations that fantasy isn't an escape from reality. It's a rehearsal for it. He was flawed, controlling, obsessive, at times cruel. But without that fire, there would be no castle, no kingdom, no mouse. He didn't build a company, he built a culture of wonder. He reminded us that the happiest endings are often born from the darkest beginnings. And while Walt Disney perished, his creation lived, happily ever after. Next time, on the Founder Files, another man who tried to build a world, not of magic, but of money. A man who once dreamed of connecting everyone, and almost lost himself in the process. John D. Rockefeller, the empire builder who discovered the price of power. Now I want to hear from you. Which founder, company, or rise and fall story should we cover next? Drop your ideas in the comments, and it might just become the next episode of The Founder Files.